one involves Nazis, the other doesn't.
Hello and welcome to Expected Own Goals, Gotham champions of CONCACAF, Arsenal champions of Europe, XOG champions of your hearts. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I am Evan Davis. We won't get into the W Champions Cup final too much, only to say that Emily Sonnet really could make a run of it in the AEW.
Yeah, that's right. We saw some top quality wrestling this weekend. Our featured match of the week probably was some of the most brutal of it, Angel City versus Louisville. But before we get there, let's just have some opening words on Gotham. Are you impressed with this accomplishment? Or, as Amy put it, was this the middest of mid-offs?
I think that it was not a particularly great game. It was a big old CONCACAFing. But, you know, Gotham seemed to really be happy that they won the trophy. It seemed like it was a big deal for them. Celebrated very excitedly. Whether it was Emily Sonnet or the center back tackling her who put the extra juice into that body slam that led to the penalty, it certainly did not lack for spectacle. And for 17,000 people at the Universitario, that was a great turnout, considering that 3 days before, you didn't know which team was going to play, so you didn't know if Tigres was actually going to be in it. And hot on the heels of the Liguilla, which is an exhausting and draining experience for everybody involved. So very cool to see that. I think it's a tournament that actually has potential if everybody takes it seriously, and maybe it's designed a little bit better so that we don't have like a 7-month gap between the group stage and the knockout stage. The calendar's the calendar, you know, it's hard to fit these kinds of games in, but I think it's just great to see Liga MX Femenil and NWSL teams playing each other in a competitive setting. So I think it's a win on that regard.
Yeah, this felt like a really fledgling start to something that is promising.
Year one of a CONCACAF tournament, yeah, there's going to be bumps.
I would love to see the tournament played out in, less than a calendar year.
Yeah.
Frankly, the pitch wasn't great.
No, it was not.
For that final, for any of the semis or the final. But all things considered, it is really good to see the sort of titans of Liga MX Femenil playing the NWSL and doing so in front of an appropriately sized crowd. All right, let's move on and do the whip around. This was kind of a goal fest this weekend.
Not just any old goal fest. 27 goals in 6 games comes to 4.5 goals scored per game, which is the second most goals per game across an NWSL match week in NWSL history.
Not a clean sheet to be found.
Not since 2021 has that occurred over the course of a full match week.
We're going to buzz through this quickly because I feel like Angel City Louisville has a lot of gas for us to cook with. Let's start off with our Friday night fixtures. Orlando, Utah.
My only thought is that I can't believe it took Barbara Banda this long to score a hat trick.
It's true.
It took her a year and a half. And also, I'm surprised that it's Orlando's first ever hat trick. That Alex Morgan or Marta or anybody never got there before them.
There was a stat banding around. There just haven't been that many hat tricks in NWSL history.
It's fair.
Only a handful a season. Barbara Banda just went beast mode. We had been wondering when she would wake up from her scoring drought. And Utah, pity to them for being the team subject to an awakened Barbara Banda.
Yeah, that was the result that finally swung Utah into extreme outlier status for their XG differential on the season, which currently sits at negative 12.2 across 10 games. Not good. And by the way, 13th place is negative 5.3. Big old gap.
The Washington Spirit traveled to Seattle, a tough place to get a result on the road, and actually kind of broke apart the Seattle defense to a certain extent.
All of the yeah buts that we've been throwing around for the last 9 weeks about Washington's season is really starting to get to the butt part because Croix Bethune looked great. The defense looked much better. Things just looked a little bit more stable while also offering the level of attacking firepower you've just been waiting to see. So maybe this is the moment. Maybe this is the moment where Washington not only keeps getting results, but starts matching them with performances.
It's almost as if having Croix Bethune able to start a game along with Rosamund Kouassi, Ashley Hatch, and Gif Monday really does make your team pretty potent in attack and does alleviate a certain amount of pressure on your backline. Granted, Washington was not perfect. The Shea Holmes goal is sort of a sloppy giveaway that they'd rather not have conceded. That said, they still only gave away 0.8 XG, which is an improvement for them. And it didn't matter that much because they really piled it on in attack. It is really hard to watch a Laura Harvey team chase a game. They don't have great options off the bench, and they've really not figured out how to activate Lynn Biondolo. After going down for the second time to Ashley Hatch's goal in the 35th minute, Seattle really struggled to create anything resembling a shot in the second half. They had a total of 5, and 4 of them came from the 85th minute on, and only Jess Fishlock's 85th minute chance header, which was pretty easily dealt with, even threatened a little bit.
Listen, my only thought really at the end of this is that I'm so thrilled that Fishlock is getting fit and not a moment too soon for the Euros. It's really all the analysis I can offer. I'm playing to type here.
Welsh ancestry, single-minded approach. Moving on to the game that barely was won, Kansas City 3, Chicago 1. And I know 3-1 is a score where both teams have participated in the game, but Chicago registered 0.1 XG.
And that's actually rounding up. They generated 0.07.
Well, the Foyts method is in full effect right now. We're really seeing the genius of Foyts demonstrated for all. Kansas City just bludgeoned a bad team.
Yeah.
Does that feel right?
Oh, yeah. With regard to Foyts, Andre Carlisle said that interview with Leslie Ryder is aging like milk on the surface of the sun.
Yeah, that's a great description.
What else can you ask from Kansas City? Maybe some diehard Current fans are like, oh, they should have scored more. Well, okay. Otherwise, I think this was a pretty flawlessly dominating performance, especially considering that you had neither Dabinia nor Alana Cook due to injury, and Claire Hutton was benched. So putting up that kind of performance without 3 key elements is pretty great, even if you're going up against one of the worst teams in the league.
Kansas City was a little bit one hand behind their back, and that just was plenty to still knock over the Chicago Stars. Thank God they don't have Penelope Hawking anymore. Not like she continued scoring in our next game. Bay Houston. I think about that line from The Last Dance, the LeBradford Smith section where Michael Jordan has the famous, and I took that personally.
Oh, yeah. No, the classic, slap it on the locker room wall, the Foyts quote. Yeah, it would not shock me if that were the case, because Hawking, ever since Albertine Montoya just decided, oh, yeah, maybe she'd be useful from first whistle, has been scoring in bunches. So it's been great to see.
Yeah, this was another one of those Bay performances where it's an actual improvement over what they've been doing of late. Still not a complete 90 minutes. They ship a late goal to Messiah Bright. And while the XG suggests they were the better team, I feel like they probably just had a handful too many mistakes in them.
Just a couple of dumb mistakes. And that's really the story of Bay's season, especially defensively. That game actually got them out of the XG differential basement, but it's not getting them out of the points basement. And they are on the outside looking in with regard to the playoff places. So just an incredibly disjointed side that just can't seem to find any level of consistency.
Now we transition to a team that kind of can do no wrong, at least as far as overperformance is concerned. The San Diego Wave 5, the North Carolina Carriage 2, on a game that was basically dead heat as far as the XG was concerned.
Yeah, for the first time ever, North Carolina has conceded 5 goals in a game. But this actually, I think, has a much clearer story to tell us. If you go back and watch the game film, I think this bears out that Adriana Leon's 2 goals and Maria Sanchez's garbage time goal all involve pretty preventable mistakes by Casey Murphy. The first Leon goal obviously is a product of good heads-up counter pressure by her and pouncing on a mistake. But then when you actually see the shot that she takes, the lack of power and the straight-at Murphy-ness of it, and the fact that it still goes in really has to be laid at Murphy's feet. Sort of similarly, the Sanchez goal run at the end looks like that. Kind of a day to forget, I think, for Murphy and for North Carolina's defense. I've seen a couple of people say that this year North Carolina's defense is bad, and I think you would and I would agree with that. It's just these are the chickens coming home to roost relative to the overperformance from their defense last year. It's just catching up to them.
Casey Murphy overperformed a lot last year, was excellent. And I think that hid a lot of the various blemishes that existed on the North Carolina backline.
Yeah.
I think the more notable thing here is that San Diego is just on an absolute finishing terror. San Diego scored 20 non-penalty goals on 10.5 non-penalty XG, which is essentially a free goal a game over what they're generating. Great for them that they're in second place and on a tear. I just think it's going to be really, really challenging for them to maintain this level of consistency.
There are compelling tactical cases for why their attack has looked really good. We've made a couple of them in past episodes. Like, there is a lot of very interesting, high energy, constant motion activity, mobility, and interchange that is going on across the front line, and particularly with like the way that Gia Corley is operating beneath the forwards. That can create measures of unpredictability. It can create difficult choices for defenses to make about whether to stick or to twist or to like stay in shape or start tracking runners. I think, though, that when that might be based in reality to a certain extent, if it's not backed up by the level of chance quality that you would hope from that level of tactical performance, my worry is that you start regressing to the mean as defenses start getting more comfortable with what you're doing. As you know, it's incredibly difficult to overperform your XG like that over the course of a season.
It's extraordinarily rare. I'd expect some level of regression from them, maybe not to a goal per XG. I think they've overperformed so much that I expect by the end of the season they'll still be overperforming their XG by some margin. That said, what makes them really different from, say, last year's Chicago Stars is that their defense is good, or at least league average. The way in which they're using possession both defensively and then using Gia Corley in progression, and frankly, Kenza Dali in progression, who's having a really nice year as far as her progression is concerned. They are doing effective things that I still think make them a winning team, just maybe not a 6-2-2 in second place in the league winning team.
You can have some offensive regression and still potentially host a playoff game at home because they're not just league average defensively, they're in third place on XG allowed, just behind Kansas City and Gotham.
That's right, because they've conceded so many penalties.
Yes, when you take the penalties out, and their defense has been pretty excellent. And so there's a lot of room to regress to the mean offensively and still, with the banked points and with these defensive performances, be fighting for a top 4 spot. Maybe not get there, but you're fighting for it.
I would not be surprised if, at this point, with the points in the bag that they already have, San Diego is like, they're comfortably a playoff team. From here on out, with 20 points, 16 games remaining, it would take them being a sub-point-a-game team to miss the playoffs.
What do you make of seemingly Idaval losing confidence in Maria Sanchez as a starter and moving forward with Kimi Ascanio in that position in the left wing?
I think Ascanio keeps it simple, stupid at times.
Rather than the high risk, high reward that Sanchez can sometimes play.
That Sanchez brings.
Yeah, that's fair.
Despite actually not generating a lot of XG, she's sort of riding a hot finishing hand. So I think some of it can be just as simple as, like, don't take the hot hand out, which has its own fallacy associated with it. But it may just be that Sanchez in training just doesn't interplay as well with Dali and Corley and Cascarino and Adriana Leon, who Idaval sees as the core and essential attackers present.
That might be true. I also wonder maybe if that they're just putting more faith in the underlying data that we have often used to be skeptical of Sanchez. I don't know. I don't know how Camille Ashton and the coaching staff have sort of set up their data operation and how much faith Idaval puts in that or how it plays into their decision making. But we have known that unless she is making a progressive pass with her left foot, she doesn't actually offer you all that much. And listen, progressive passing with your left foot ain't nothing. And it's allowed her to be a very well-paid career NWSL player. But in aggregate, she does not maybe offer you the package that you would want. And maybe you think Ascanio just has more upside there. I don't know.
The knock on Sanchez has been not a high volume goal scorer and chance getter, considering who else is around. Just a stable attacker who will ghost in at the penalty box or at the edge of the 6-yard box to be on the end of a Cascarino cutback is actually what he's looking for.
And Ascanio has been better defensively too from the front.
I don't doubt that that's part of it too. I also think that this just happens from time to time. When you have players that were brought in before the new regime enters, you often have players that don't fit what the coach's ideal is, or players like Maria Sanchez, who I actually think do need to be the focal point of an offense.
Yeah.
And that's just never going to be how IWL's running it. Kimi Ascanio, as best as we can tell, does not require either A, a lot of touches, or B, a lot of attention to be a positive cog in the San Diego Wave offense. And I think that that's not true of Maria Sanchez right now.
and it's not just the head coaching regime that changed, but also the front office. Camille Ashton comes on in June, whereas Maria Sanchez got traded in April last year. So, and new ownership, like every layer of the decision-making apparatus that brought Maria Sanchez to San Diego is not in place anymore.
Now we get to our big old primetime match of the week, Louisville 3, Angel City 2. Evan, you were at the game. I apparently missed WrestleMania. What was your impression of the game as it unfolded?
It was pretty argy-bargy, very back and forth, quite physical, even though not a lot of fouls or cards were getting thrown around. But neither team was generating particularly high level of high percentage chances, besides the 2 penalties at the end of the day. Savannah DeMello is the only truly great chance of the entire game off of a great poach counterattack. Kayla Fisher had some good looks in the beginning where Angel City's defense really did not look comfortable, whatever you might chalk that up to. They could not deal with Louisville's pressure. And so Kayla Fisher, I think in the first half hour, got 3 good-looking chances in the box. Couple from just very simple, old school Louisville, just lump it over the top, get Taylor Flint to flick it on, kind of direct play. You'd say that through the first half hour or so, Louisville definitely were the better side, but it's not like they were really blowing the hinges off the place either. In the second half, Riley Tiernan gets yet another goal from a low percentage chance, just burnishing her Rookie of the Year bona fides without a lot of substance behind them.
It's a great finish.
It's a great finish. It sure is.
It's a great read. It's a great finish. She picks the ball up on the half turn, beats a defender, finds a seam, and surprises Jordan Bloomer with a whipped shot across the face of goal into the far side netting. It's a striker's finish.
At an acute ankle from 19 yards with defenders in the area, it's just one of those things of it's great for the highlight reel. Is this really indicative of the quality of player you're going to be going forward? That's always the issue, right?
Great finish, repeatable finish, harder to say. To go back to the Fisher stuff in the first half, I actually think the seeds of Fisher's red card come from the pressing action where she takes the ball off Angelina Anderson and basically is tugged. You can see a very clear shirt pull.
To the point where, I was maybe for a second surprised that they didn't get a penalty out of that.
Totally. I actually thought it was a huge blown call.
If she goes down and doesn't take the shot, maybe you get a whistle there.
Kayla Fisher came out playing really on the front foot, really aggressive, gets a number of decent chances in the first half hour or so, the best of which probably should have won her team a penalty. There's a sort of ball don't lie correctness to the subsequent Louisville cross, catching Macy Hodge in the hand, resulting in a penalty that should have been called 10 seconds earlier. I felt like that was sort of the first glimpse at, this game's maybe not going to be that well refereed.
That and Kayla Fisher maybe has a bit of red mist about her anyway, given the number of yellow cards she got last year. So that's the wrong player for that to happen to, and for justice not to have been served.
She plays on the edge. She's got a little of that Eric Cantona in her. She just isn't going to take a lot of shit from people.
Because I got to hold on to my angst. I preserve it because I need it. It keeps me sharp on the edge where I got to be.
I mean, she's my front runner for comeback player of the year, right?
Oh, she's been great.
What a transformation relative to what she has been, moving her centrally, making her a target 9 rather than someone who has a lot of final ball service and backline stretching, wide backline stretching responsibilities, has just made her so incredibly effective and is been a great source of service from DeMello and Sonis. It's just been very, very, very impressive.
Again, speaking of players who are ghosting into the right positions between the penalty spot and the 6-yard line, Kayla Fisher's been feasting in the box this year, and it's been great for her XG, but also just like great for her teammates to have a consistent target. And now that they have like true multivaried wingers in Sonis and Sears playing at the same time, there's a lot of great service options. That no-look diagonal across the box to DeMello is like what happens when you're doing all the other things right.
It was a very tasty key pass, but I think what Fisher has forced defenses to think about is, what does your right-sided center back do? Do they stay close in 2v1 Fisher, or do they move wide to deal with Emma Sears? That's an impossible choice to make at this point in the season. And that has just given Fisher more room to operate. She has really, really found a very high yield on that harvest.
I think earlier in the year we could have said Kayla Fisher is the beneficiary of a rising tide lifts all boats with the other component players around. And now I think it is fair to say that she is also improving the players around her with what she is doing. And this game sort of being a primary example of that. Let's go to the Sears goal, which I think is a little bit underrated by XG. That's just a 5'10" attacker free in the box. But Kayla Fisher's almost on the end of that, too. It's good that she doesn't touch it. It might have been offside. But like Kayla Fisher, right place, right time, even on second phase corner kick stuff. And then we get to the DeMello goal, which again is a byproduct of Taylor Flint doing Taylor Flint stuff and Kayla Fisher being in the right place and being a reliable outlet immediately.
You don't need to hear us praise Taylor Flint any more than we already do, but she's a defensive battering ram, and sometimes she's also a pretty darn good lockpick when you're trying to move the ball, especially when you're moving with that level of speed and directness in a counterattack. It was a very helpful reminder for all the confusion we've had about, like, how is Louisville this good right now? Those are pretty clear, cut and dried examples of why this team is actually kind of like making it all work this year.
Let's get to the red card. For those of us who were watching it on a screen, it wasn't immediately clear what had happened. What was your take on the red card as you saw it? Did you see it as it was unfolding?
I mean, I did watch it, but relative to where the press box is at BMO Stadium, it was the other side of the field. So we couldn't have the clearest of looks as it happened. So we didn't fully soak it in until we also saw the replay in the stadium like everybody else. But I mean, I don't red card plus penalty, I don't know if it ever gets any clearer than that for an away from the ball action. She just fully grabs Madison Hammond's head and just rips her to the ground. Like,
it's clear the two of them have been tussling, but then Fisher goes, as a friend of mine described to me from in the stadium, it was a full ponytail pull. And then it becomes sort of like a scalping, which is almost even worse.
You pull the hair in women's soccer. That is the ultimate Bush League move.
Fisher, who had been on the end of some pretty tough tackles and a non-call penalty, had just, despite the game state being 3-1, had just kind of had enough. Retaliated. This is an adjustment that she'll need to make as she sort of has her Ella Stevens level glow up. It's like you're just going to get a lot more attention. I think Madison Hammond was sent in there to be a pest, and it worked.
You get a reputation when you act like this, both with coaches and players, but also with refs. And so refs know which ones are the shithouses on the field. Like, you know, refs pay attention to Katie McCabe when Katie McCabe gets up to something. And Fisher, I think, has rapidly become that kind of player too. And to your point, like, as an attacker, as a striker, and as someone who seems to be in the middle of everything now, maybe more so than she's ever been, there's just no way to, like, hide that shit. And so if you have a player, you know, whatever Madison Hammond's demerits on pure skill or production are concerned, she's not stupid. She's actually a pretty smart and savvy, could be on the coaching path kind of a player. And so she's going to know how to do it. You know, Emily Sonnet got body slammed during the W Champions Cup final, but Emily Sonnet also knew that there were some extra hands going into some places, and she leaned all the way in to make sure that she created the most beautiful picture of what was occurring, because she's smart. She knows how to, like, attract attention to get her team an advantage, you know? And Hammond did that too. And Hammond didn't actually have to do much because Fisher just went full big boss man in the WWE.
let's flip this script and talk about Angel City, a team that I think if you're a dedicated listener to this podcast, you aren't surprised lost at home to Louisville. I think the narrative more broadly reflected the table standing before this game began, which is Angel City is a better team than Louisville. I don't think we thought that, not even close. That said, Angel City looked pretty void of solid offensive ideas in the first half.
The issue became Miyabi Moria moving into right back so you could push Giselle Thompson into the forward line. And that's the really baffling thing. And this has happened once or twice before this season. And the first time it happened, Sam Laity defended it as saying like he didn't want to disrupt relationships elsewhere on the field. But the relationship that Giselle Thompson is trying to create by being that far forward is also a disruption. Everything just sort of looked out of joint. If you want to criticize Laity's tenure, we'll go deeper on this in a second. You want to criticize Laity's tenure for personnel decision, it really comes down to moves like this, where you also can't really understand the rationale for making these moves. Claire Emsley is injured, so you have to figure something out at winger. Do you really not trust Julie Dufour? And Julie Dufour truly might be just a player caught in the no man's land between regimes because she got signed after Angela Hucles-Mangano no longer had decision-making power and before Mark Parsons came in, and certainly before Sam Laity or Alexander Strauss came in. Is this a situation where Parsons and Laity don't believe in her, and that's why they're not giving her game time? This feels like you're playing 3D chess when you just need to be playing checkers, but it's not the first time that it's occurred. And maybe there's good reason to not trust Dufour as a winger here. And this isn't not even, we're not even going to touch the Kristen Press stuff till later, but like, it's just feels like you're trying to be too cute, too clever by half in making Giselle Thompson part of the attacking band to fill a need. And then Miyabi tends to end up getting too far upfield without enough progressive production in order to make that viable. And so, yeah, they just look kind of like a mess. And when they get into the final third, because they had the run of the final third, 65-35 field tilt, but did they do much with it? No. And you can see, like, if you could see the heat map, the team-wide heat map, there is no consistent or set pattern of like who had dominance where on the field. A lot of the pitch ended up being contested areas, and it really read when you were in the stadium watching the game.
Yeah, I feel like again this is another. It's sort of, and it's no longer Laity's problem, but just that balance has never come naturally to Angel City. That's tough because, you know, they got more box touches than Louisville. They got more box shots than Louisville. All of those box shots were not good shots somehow.
Not a single quality chance from Angel City all game. The only one that would qualify is the penalty that they scored.
Did Angel City get jobbed? Is that a penalty, the Ellie Jean handball?
Live in the stadium, it certainly seemed clear as day that Ellie Jean's arm was in an unnatural position and that she impeded the progress of the ball.
Same on TV.
We got an extra angle on replay in the stadium where I think only on television you saw it from the front, whereas in the stadium we also got to see it from the back. The only thing that I can say, and it's not my interpretation, it's from the resident ref inside of American Soccer Analysis, they took a look at it and they thought that Jean was bringing her arm back toward her body as the ball was coming at her. And as such, that action implied that she was moving her arm back into a natural position. And the action of doing that is what allows for it to be a simple check complete, move on call.
That's not my read.
If you are preternaturally disposed to believing refs are morons and get things wrong and only protect their own, then maybe you can reject our ref associates' assessment of that. But I think it's worth thinking about. I did not see the moving back toward the body part of that action. I did not see that, and I had two angles. But I also am not a professional referee, and I don't know what they're looking at. And if I couldn't see it and you couldn't see it and basically nobody could see it, but multiple referees did see it, then either IFAB or Pro or somebody needs to do a better job explaining why that was justified, that Ellie Jean's arm ended up in a justifiable position when the ball struck it. Nobody seems to have seen that fact except for people who have been referees or are currently referees.
Well, I think the other thing that's so hard about this, and again, it's because of the missed call earlier in the game that should have been a shirt pull Kayla Fisher penalty and potentially some like very serious trouble for Angelina Anderson, turns into a get out of jail free penalty on a cross. Macy Hodges' arm is closer to her body than Ellie Jean's is, and that's a handball called. And I would argue is in a more natural position. So you sort of already have agreed in this game to call a certain kind of handball, whether it's a cover your ass call or not. That, like, I'm not here for makeup calls, but I am here for consistency. And it seemed like the only real consistency here was to call. I don't think Ellie Jean's trying to gain an advantage. It's just a loose chicken wing flapping in the wind. It gets hit on a cross from Alyssa Thompson into a danger area while chasing a goal, yada, yada, yada. That's a really straightforward, and the ref didn't even look at it in stadium. Like, VAR just says no call.
Check complete. The clear and obvious error threshold is high, which is why you want the ref to get it right on the field so that you don't require VAR to clear a very, very high burden of proof at that point. But I think the real key point you just made is that, as we have often discussed, is well known, what players and coaches really want inside of a game is consistency. Oh, you're calling that? Okay, got it. Oh, you're not calling that? Okay, got it. And adjust accordingly. And so to your point, if Macy Hodges' arm is at less of a 45-degree angle than Ellie Jean's was, and that gets called a handball penalty, then you have to expect that when Ellie Jean's incident occurs in the 84th minute, that should be called as well. So in absolute terms, if referees want to offer a detailed explanation as to why we're all wrong with what we saw, I'm willing to entertain that in absolute terms. But in relative terms, which is really how the spirit and the art, the spirit of the law and the art of officiating really ends up being played out in practice, then you have to say the ref got it wrong.
It felt just like a gimme that was sitting right there. And, you know, good for Louisville in the sense that they have struggled to hold on to games that they have justifiably won. This is an instance when I really feel like Angel City, for all the complaining that fan base does about the refereeing, they are rightfully aggrieved that the ref really bottled that one, as best as I can tell. Let's get to Angel City. Let's first talk Kristen Press, and then let's go to the Sam Laity era and sort of how it stacks up. Because I think there's overlap. First, describe for me what you sort of see as the Press controversy as interpreted by Angel City fans, and then let's address what Press actually said on social media.
Yeah, Kristen Press is a legend. I mean, we've talked about this issue in the past, but it's maybe good here to just kind of lay the entire theory of the case out. So Kristen Press is a legend. Kristen Press is a great player. Kristen Press is a multiple World Cup winner and is a very important player in the recent history of U.S. women's soccer at the club and the international level. There's no denying that. Her bona fides are set in stone and is most likely a first ballot U.S. Soccer Hall of Famer when she retires. And also, earlier in her national team career, she was on the justifiable end of the why aren't you picking her conversation. For a lot of time, she wasn't getting starting minutes, and she was one of the 2 or 3 best options to be a wide attacker for that side. I think if you've been around this sport long enough, sometimes you can hold on to that a player that you really valued and felt was undervalued by the powers that be, who is the face of the club despite the fact that she's played a grand total of, 400 minutes in the last 3 years. Jesus, it doesn't matter. She's a big deal. But the information that we have that is concrete, verifiable, and confirmable is that she tore her ACL 3 years ago. She spent 2 years recovering, 4 surgeries in that time, has since turned 36 years old, which is not generally the age you want to be as a winger with that injury history. And we can go straight to what she's actually said with her own mouth, verbatim on the record. We have that information. She talked on her podcast recap a few weeks ago. By the end of my season, meaning 2024, I didn't know if I would even be able to play this year, meaning 2025. And so where I am in year 15 of my professional career is I do truly feel like it's a gift, like it's a miracle that I get to do what I love. I want to say I will never be the same player that I was, but I am absolutely on a journey to be a player that is extraordinary and joyful and scoring and smiling. Then after the loss to Louisville, she posted on her Instagram stories, quote, I personally wasn't at 100% for the match last night, had been dealing with a small muscle injury and did what I could to be available as much as possible for my team. This seemingly was in response to a lot of backlash about the fact that she played only, 10 minutes?
Yeah, she comes on past the 80th minute, yeah.
She's averaging 22 and a half minutes per game, an average that is inflated by one game that she started. I don't know why people think that she is more capable of more playing time than she has been allotted. I think what it probably centers on is that her agent made a comment on an Angel City Instagram post decrying the fact that she wasn't getting enough playing time and that she, quote, was completely healthy. Now, I think a lot of people have probably zeroed in on that part of that comment from her. And we should say, this actually isn't her sports agent. This is her business manager that made that comment. So that is actually kind of a key detail. Completely healthy might mean that you can train every day and dress for games. It might not mean that you are 90 minutes match fit or 45 minutes match fit or 30 minutes match fit. It might mean that you are 10 to 15 minutes match fit. And I think maybe that's where the disconnect is, because again, we have Kristen Press's own words here that unless I am so wildly off base in interpreting what she has said, seem to paint a picture of a player who is admitting that she probably isn't going to be the 30-minute sub, full half sub, starting player that a lot of fans and pundits seem to think that she should be. I don't understand why that has to be a bad thing. And that is another big part of what makes all of this confusing. I am not here to carry Mark Parsons or Sam Laity's water. We're going to have plenty of criticism for Sam Laity in just a second. I don't really know how you can lay this at his feet, even though he did say in one game, that he regretted not playing her more.
Sure. A reasonable regret from a football manager. A thing that probably doesn't get said in press conferences all the time. A manager thinking, I didn't get my sub timing right, or I didn't get my sub balance right in this game. Hard job, hard thing to do. I think the thing with Kristen Press, and not to get too big on this, part of the reason we started this podcast was because there were players like Kristen Press who weren't getting attention at the right points in their career. And we wanted to shed a light on these unheralded, really the impetus is a Sam Coffey, but these players who we think are superlatively talented, not getting the kind of attention they deserve. Kristen Press would have been someone we were championing more than a decade ago. Probably did champion in conversations. What I read from Kristen Press is deep self-knowledge about her own health and about the journey toward recovery. Everyone who's kind of had Kristen Press as a player in her Angel City tenure have been doing the best they can to only use her as in case of emergency break glass, because She has an injury track record that is really hard to overcome.
Especially for a player at that age and at that position.
Totally. And you know what? In this particular season, I think Angel City have gotten some really good minutes out of Kristen Press by using her sparingly.
That's exactly it. I mean, she's averaging 22 and a half minutes a game, but her net G plus above positional average per 96 minutes is 0.12, which is excellent.
Unlike a 0.12 player who is 23 years old, who we'd like to see getting more minutes, running Kristen Press into the ground will have diminishing returns.
There might be a belief that she has been excellent in spite of her lack of playing time, when actually she's probably been excellent because of her lack of playing time.
We just need to get in that headspace. Players know their own bodies. Nobody at Angel City wants to see Kristen Press injured again, and they are managing her carefully because of that.
It would take an extraordinary amount of either malevolence, incompetence, or both to have Kristen Press, who re-signed in the offseason, probably on pretty good money, and think that she is one of the 3 or 4 best attackers that Angel City has, and then deliberately and intentionally not play her. You have to be either really stupid, really vindictive, or both. And Julie Ehrman doesn't control things anymore, so it's hard to argue either of those points.
Yeah, that's a plot line in the movie Major League. That's not what Angel City is attempting to do.
It certainly doesn't seem that way. Sam Laity and Mark Parsons just have to be so stupid or just so angry for some reason at Press that they would want to retaliate against her like this. And Occam's razor would suggest 36-year-old with a potato knee is probably the simpler explanation. And listen, 36 years old with a potato knee could still mean that on some clubs you might be one of the 3 or 4 best attackers on the club. But let's ask ourselves, over 90 minutes, or at least as a starting 11 element, or even as a 45 or 30-minute sub-element, is she better than Claire Emsley? Is she better than Riley Tiernan? Is she potentially better than Kennedy Fuller and they figure out a different tactical alignment? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, and she's still not getting this much playing time, then I think it's probably worth questioning some of Laity's personnel decisions. From the point of view of the starting 11 or from a substitution with a lot more responsibility in terms of playing time, I just don't see how you can make that case.
From our point of view, what is the actual goal here? It is to get the highest productive, most efficient minutes out of whatever combination of players you have that suits the game state of the game you're playing in. Getting a first 45 minutes out of Kristen Press and then subbing her at the half, you're probably not getting the best Kristen Press because you're not using her in the case of high leverage situation. Like, you want her in the highest leverage situation if you think she's really good. And the numbers this year bear out that she's really good. So it's figuring out where between the 60th and 90th minute you can slot her. And generally speaking, that's been on the agenda for every Angel City game this season. Right now, Angel City only has one undroppable attacker. Respect to Riley Tiernan for what she's doing, but it's Alyssa Thompson.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's a pretty open contest. If you want to go and slam Sam Laity for something, it's not having seen Casey Fair or Julie Dufour, but they get to see these players every day in training. Making an international transfer in the case of Dufour and adjusting to a new league and a new playing style is hard enough. So if we see Julie Dufour as a productive player for this Angel City team down the back half of this season, it will still be serving the premise that we posed a second ago. Getting the most out of your minutes with the players that you have.
And in the case of Casey Fair, she's still 17. She doesn't turn 18 for another month. We've been spoiled in recent years in the NWSL with some great 17-year-old attackers that have come through. But just because Casey Fair isn't playing now doesn't mean she's never going to play.
Casey Fair wasn't viewed in the same way that Olivia Moultrie was viewed, or Jaden Shaw, or even Alyssa Thompson. Casey Fair does not come with that level of undeniable pedigree. She's a player who's working her way into a starting job over time in a system that she'll become increasingly familiar with, and right now has Riley Tiernan, who is clearly a better option.
If we're going to let Sam Laity off the hook for that, what should we put him on the hook for?
Oh, first off, what were his subs not called Kristen Press toward the end of this game?
Bingo.
He left his powder dry on one of them. He had Casey Fair and Julie Dufour while chasing a goal and up a player. He made a series of what I can only describe as relatively head-scratching choices.
Like for like at the half, bringing on Madison Hammond for Macy Hodge. That probably
yellow card influence.
Exactly,
yeah.
And that's fine. And then you bring Katie Zellum on for Kennedy Fuller in the 74th when you're down a goal. That's trading offense for defense. Doesn't seem smart. Press comes on in the 85th. And then you bring on a garbage time sub, the young kid, Sophia Matisse, for Miyabi Moria, and you don't make a fifth sub at any point. That is foolish when you are up a player and down a goal. What is that thought process? That doesn't make any sense. And I got to say, Laity was emotional in his final press conference. He spoke how brutal the last couple of weeks had been with regard to the Savvy King aftermath. But then also, when I asked him what lessons he kind of learned about himself as a coach for this now third stint as a head coach, 2 as an interim, in his career in the NWSL, he was like, "You're really catching me on a bad day because I am furious with myself and gutted with leaving the team to Alex in this state." Like, he really, really took it on the chin. I would understand why you have to do some self-reflection on like how you manage your substitutions in a situation like this. When you have the advantage, you have the ability to press the advantage. You're down a goal and up a player. Come on, guy.
Sam Laity made some boneheaded decisions in chasing a goal to level this game, and no amount of being robbed a penalty they probably should have had really answers for that.
Yeah, and I think also Laity as a coach is well liked in the NWSL. He's well respected from everything that I've been able to hear about him. Players like him, front office executives like him, other coaches like him. He was obviously at Laura Harvey's side for years and years and years, but he hasn't had that many opportunities to be a head coach. Things did not go well in Houston in 2023 for him. Got him fired with, I think, 2 games to go at the end of the season. And this stint at Angel City kind of feels like a push to me, if I'm being honest. I mean, they finish his tenure 8th place on non-penalty XG differential. They finish tied for 6th on points. I know goal differential shuffles the table positions there a little bit, but tied for 6th on points, 8th on XG differential. That reads like a pretty meh 10 games for me. And does it all fall at his feet? Some of it does. Again, the managing of the substitutions in this last game. Desperately trying to work Giselle Thompson into the forward line when you're down a winger, rather than just keeping her at right back and playing Dufour instead. Okay, roll the dice, play press. Like, that doesn't seem like it was a smart way to like manage your squad. I think also it's not easy to be in the position of an interim head coach, especially when you have a GM saying like, you could be head coach for 3 games, you could be head coach for 10 games. I don't know yet. And also saying, like, we are implementing a very specific kind of style and tactical philosophy here, and you need to get the players up to speed on that. And when we talk about, like, the weird inconsistencies and disjointednesses of Angel City's performances, I think a lot of it does come down to that initial theoretical precept that Mark Parsons laid out to us, which is, I want us to be energetic and aggressive, but I also want us to have possession and control. And those 2 things are tough to get in balance at the same time when you have a brand new head coach and a bunch of new players and a bunch of new ideas you're trying to work in all at once. So that can't have been easy to manage. And you look at it, like, if you want to say this is Laity's fault, you can. Like, there are, I count, 6 players who were with Angel City last year, or potentially even longer than that, who all regressed, at least in terms of like net G plus above positional average per 96, have all regressed this year, including Claire Emsley, Emma Vignola, Sarah Gordon, Kennedy Fuller, Giselle Thompson, Katie Zellum. Some of those can be age-related, potentially. Some of those can be fitness-related.
Some of it is also a small sample, only 10 games.
If you were to make the anti-Laity case, there is some evidence there that would suggest that we've seen a lot of players take steps back under his time. But why is that? And is that something that Laity is actively responsible for? I think it's more debatable than maybe some people would make you believe.
Theoretically, Strauss will change this. Angel City just have never had a manager who has made clearly a positive impact on the team.
Yeah. They've had 3 of them, and yes, that's correct.
Freya Coombe, not a great era.
Nope.
Becky Tweed, remarkably similar.
Yep. Despite that little blip that got them into the playoffs.
Becky Tweed's new manager bounce that got them into the playoffs and that famous 5-1 victory over the Portland Thorns aside, the Becky Tweed era is defined by the same things that the Freya Coombe era is defined by, which is startling mediocrity. I think it would be fair to say that this version of Angel City this season is slightly more talented than what they've had in the past. Maybe it's a push there too, but it's not like Sam Laity was out there doing worse than any manager who's ever had this job before had done. I think his points per game record ends up being slightly better.
And again, what does that mean? Because it's 10 games.
Yeah, exactly. The real question is, what is a reasonable assessment of Angel City right now in terms of their talent? And what is a reasonable expectation for their end of season with Strauss coming in?
I think that they are as mid as the next team in this league.
They are very middle of the pack for me on talent.
They could sneak into the playoffs. They could finish 10th or 11th. I mean, like, we're a broken record about that, too. Like,
does the addition of Youngsdotter change things?
Yes, I think it does. We actually haven't really talked about her yet because the signing happened late last week after we finished recording main feed. Yes, it does change things. I don't imagine that it's going to help Kristen Press's chance of getting more minutes when Svendis Jónsdóttir joins the team, especially if you consider Riley Tierney your number 9. I mean, the joke that I made to you is like, does this team really need another winger? Like, she's a good player, but this is not necessarily the deepest issue in terms of their personnel. But, she's played the 9 before. She could be a very mobile kind of like Sophia Wilson-esque number 9, which could be interesting if you don't believe in Riley Tiernan. But everybody at the club seems to, even though we think she's playing over her skis a bit.
It's too soon to make a more declarative statement. It's just she's overperforming what she should be scoring.
So Jónsdóttir, I think, immediately does improve the team. It's just like, who starts earning fewer minutes? Like, does this mean Claire Emsley's probably not getting a lot of playing time for the rest of the year? I mean, she's hurt right now, so that solves the problem in the immediate term. But Jónsdóttir has turned herself into a primary goal-scoring threat over the last year at Wolfsburg, mostly because there was nobody else to do it. And so you actually saw her final ball service numbers crater in 2024-25 while her XG goes up. And that's entirely because she just really didn't have anybody to feed the ball to. That won't be the case here at Angel City. So we could see her as more of the dribbly end-line specialist that we've known her to be in previous years at Wolfsburg. So I think that does improve Angel City. Certainly, for whatever it is with 2025, it is a play for the future because she is young and the contract is long-term. So they are getting her for the next iteration of the club in 26 and 27. Their biggest problem still remains how they manage their defensive transitions and making sure they don't get bled out on the counter. None of their defensive issues get solved by Jónsdóttir. That still probably leaves them, best case scenario, a low playoff 7-8 seed.
Strauss is a play for the future. They have a lot of young talent that are plays for the future. When we talked to Mark Parsons, he was talking about winning titles, this being year 1 of 3. All signs are that Laity was here to bridge the gap between not very good management and ideally better management while keeping them in the hunt. That is where they are.
Yeah, they're tied for 6th on points.
They are on talent, not one of the elite teams in this league, but by no means one of the worst. They are making good moves for the future that could help them at the margins right now. I think this is where the sort of play Kristen Press maximally drives me most insane. Kristen Press is not dragging this team to a supporter's shield. What is the point of playing her more minutes so that you can win every game? That's not happening. That's not how soccer works.
Especially with the rest of the talent available.
With the rest of the team. The cult of personality is not helpful even for her. She can't do all of that. And that's not to say she, at her peak, wasn't an elite player. She absolutely was. There is a reason she is celebrated. But if you want her to sort of end her career on a club high, you want her primed and ready to actually go 90 minutes in October, November, when she has helped drag you into the playoffs and then on a deep playoff run. You don't need her in May to be the person who recovers a single point against Louisville. Team is not good enough to expect to be one of the teams that has emerged as better than them consistently. We don't have to manage personalities. We don't also have to figure out a comfortable narrative and change the nucleus of an organization that has been carefully constructed. For Alex Strauss, I think the best thing he can do is sneak this team into the playoffs.
And that's very much in play.
So in play. By the way, I don't think it's a failure if he doesn't, because that's not the goal. Obviously, they'd like to make the playoffs, but that is not make or break for a guy who takes over a team with 16 games to go, who you've signed long-term, who's coming from winning the Frauen Bundesliga. You're signing this guy for the future.
And unlike Chicago, Angel City does seem to be laying seeds for midterm future success. Like, I don't think this team is going to have the same struggles next year as it has had this year or the year before. Whereas Chicago, you have no idea what the plan is. You don't know how they're going to find success at the end of their 3-year journey, self-proclaimed. Whereas Angel City does seem like they are on the way to doing something. If it's not 2025, it will eventually bear fruit.
Yeah, Angel City have a 3-year plan that at least seems executable on some level.
Or we could be wrong and Parsons fucks up a couple of signings. Strauss turns out to be a true, like, let us see him do it on a wet Tuesday in Stoke kind of guy and doesn't understand the league and blows it. I mean, that could happen too. I mean, we're not inside these people's minds as much access as we do have as press in other ways. But it just seems like there at least is some active intelligence trying to make this team better eventually, even if it's maybe not trying to get them a championship now. Thank you guys so much for listening this week. Please rate us 5 stars. Please review us on your podcatcher of choice and follow us there as well. Tell all of your friends about us. Join our Patreon for only $6 a month or $60 a year, which gets you 4 bonus episodes every single month, including access to our Discord server and access to our semi-regular YouTube live streams, one of which we did for the Champions League final over the weekend, which was a rousing success.
Very fun. Very fun.
So a mere $6 a month gets you all of that and more. If you believe we've made an own goal, drop us an email at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com. Follow us on social media as well at XOwnGoals. That's the letter XOwnGoals. Back with you on Patreon on Thursday with Chloe Sainsbury to talk about the Champions League and the WSL. And back with you on main feed next week.
Bye.